have to come back in the new year, you will be notified accordingly. Let's adjourn and resume at 11:35.
It brings us to just about 20 minutes after 11 o'clock. We've just listened there to the tail end of Julius Mkhwanazi's time before the Madlanga Commission, which, as you know by now, is sitting at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. Before we got into the second leg of Mkhwanazi's testimony, the chair did point out that there's just too much to get through and we're unlikely to, in fact, complete his testimony. And that's why you heard towards the tail end there, the chairperson saying that Julius Mkhwanazi will have to come back in the new year. And that's because there were just so many serious claims that have been made before this inquiry, which Mkhwanazi has to respond to, including the allegation that he was part of a cover-up of a murder that was allegedly committed by some officials of the EMPD. In fact, it was witness D, who testified partly in camera. All we could hear at the time was his voice because they were concealing his identity, who made mention of how during their interrogation of a suspect, the person, this individual, apparently died, and those who were part of that interrogation called him Julius Mkhwanazi, who arrived at the scene and hashed out this plan to dump the body. I imagine Julius Mkhwanazi will have to respond to that and many other very serious claims that have subsequently been raised. What we are anticipating now, and you'll forgive me, I made an error earlier on, is the testimony of Senzo Mkhunu, where you can see on the side of your screen there. We now know he will start at 25 minutes towards 12 o'clock. This is a continuation of the testimony that he left off in, I think it was on Tuesday or on Wednesday earlier this week. He, of course, a central figure in the disbandment of the political killings task team. So this inquiry will move slightly away from the EMPD stream and get us back to those allegations, which, if you like, really set in motion the series of events that have unfolded since Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's bombshell briefing in July. But in case you weren't able to stay with us for the entire time, let me just take you back to some of the other salient moments that have emerged from Julius Mkhwanazi's testimony. At some stage, he had a back and forth with the evidence leader and accused this evidence leader of being too technical, saying he, that's Mkhwanazi, doesn't want to hang himself before commissioners. Take a listen.
Once the vehicle are registered, bought by the city, once they're issued to the department, it becomes the responsibility of a department.
And that way they get associated with the department?
Yes, once they're issued.
Yes.
Once they're issued to the
Yes.
not associated. Your wording is putting me aside. Association and issued is two different things. Once they're issued or once they're handed to the department,
Okay.
there's handing over ceremony where we receive all our fleet.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the 4 donated vehicles are issued to EMPD?
No, they were not issued to EMPD. They were not issued to EMPD. I've said we didn't receive those vehicles.
Oh,
They were not physically issued to.
but they were intended to be issued?
Yes,
To
yes.
EMPD?
Yes.
So they would be strictly for use by EMPD?
Yes.
And therefore, they would be able, that would assist whoever is able to fit in blue lights on the basis that it's for the use by EMPD. I'm not saying facilitated by EMPD, but that would enable them to do so.
Don't be technical.
Oh,
You are.
I thought it's technical issues.
You are.
So,
Repeat that statement. I will stop you. And may you please, there's where I want to stop you and want you to change the wording. Today you want me to hang myself to the commissioners.
okay. I have no interest in you hanging yourself. In fact, you still have a lot of assistance to render to the commission, so I would desperately not wish for you to hang yourself.
Of course, what is at the center of the claims against him, Julius Mkhwanazi, is this relationship that he apparently has with alleged criminal mastermind Vusi Matlala. At some stage, the commission progressed to that relationship and flat out asked Julius Mkhwanazi whether he's ever received money from Matlala. Let's take you back to that moment.
I will argue before the commissioners that those payments were made in gratification for your efforts in facilitating the registration of the vehicles to enable Mr. Matlala to fit them with blue lights.
No.
Do you have, let me finish first. because I'm going to invite you for a comment.
Yes.
And that's what I'm going to argue to the commissioners, based on the evidence and these amounts and the times. Particularly because when you started, I asked you whether you have received monies. You were telling me about Ngamla 500, 1,000.
Great.
And then you stuck with that story until you just increased it slightly. I asked you to give me a number that he would have contributed for the funeral, seeing as for petrol and the like, it's 500,000, and technically you refused to. It is when I produced these amounts to you that then you allocated one of them potentially to a funeral. You refused to state when was this death. It stretched from before or after your suspension, and here there are specific dates. So on the basis of all that, I am going to seek to persuade the commissioners that this is in part gratification. I'm not even suggesting it's the totality, but at least we know that at the moment of that letter of intention to commit, Mr. Matlala had started making significant payments to you. No. Do you have a comment?
No, it's not that. As I'm saying that, he even promised me far more than that. Even now, when we're not having, there was nothing that was happening. You see, he said, when I get this thing, Gamla, you will retire, I'm going to take, you will find another thing, business and everything. And I was very happy. In far more than that, you see. Even though it didn't specify, you see. And I even said, I was praying that to get those things. I was praying that to get that tender, you see, so that I can start my own and relax, as you see. This is, in fact, to him, it was just nothing. It has nothing to do with that, you see. There was something which is bigger than this, you see. When there was nothing that is happening, nurse and other things, he said, no, I want you to start your own thing and retire. I said, hey,
may I be fair to you and ask you not to commit yourself too early? I didn't say that that is the totality of the evidence of payments made to you.
Oh, yes.
I'm just discussing the payments in that period of 2012.
Okay.
So I would advise that you don't commit yourself any further, than you have.
All right, so there was testimony from Julius Mkhwanazi, who told the commission there that the thousands of rands he received from Cat Matlala were in some ways just part of what he was promised. Let's take you to Bridget Mabanda Justice College. That's where we find our senior reporter in Kenny Mapanga, who's been watching developments very closely and joins us now live. And Kenny, we're expecting Julius Mkhwanazi back in the hot seat come next year. But of course, when the commission resumes in a few minutes' time, it'll be Senzo Mkhunu who gives his testimony.
Indeed, we've seen the commission wrap up, I guess, what we can call the first half of Mkhwanazi's testimony. However, he will have to return as they continue with that cross-examination that is getting down to the truth of this alleged dynamic between him and alleged cartel member Vusi Cat Matlala and the subsequent conduct he may have allegedly participated in the city of Ekurhuleni. But we can get back to that at a later stage. The police minister, Senzo Mkhunu, who is on a leave of absence, will take the stand shortly and continue with his testimony. He is at the center of this particular probe. Not only did he trigger that July media briefing through his December announcement to disband the PKTT, but subsequently also led us to this very important probe into these allegations of these criminal syndicates allegedly infiltrating the criminal justice system. Now, we did discuss earlier this week the kind of legal strategy that we were picking up from Mkhunu as he lays his defense towards these very serious allegations. And to join us shortly now to elaborate on that, I am joined by the spokesperson for Mr. Mkhunu, that is Stembi Somshenge. He's a bit far from me, but I am going to get quite close to him. I think we can start at the point that I am highlighting about this strategy. He was very clear about laying a foundation on the PKTT being a political intervention, not an administrative decision. Is this part of the legal strategy that you've come up with as Mkhunu's team to defend that particular decision that has come into the spotlight in light of the circumstances surrounding the events leading up to that particular decision?
A very good morning, my dear sister. In actual fact, it's not just a defense strategy. It is a fact of life in terms of how Minister Mkhunu came to issue that letter on the 31st of December last year. in actual fact, it's not about him defending his decision. It's about him explaining to South Africans the legality of his decision and the appropriateness of his decision, because he still believes that it was a correct decision up until today. So there is no issue about him trying to defend himself. It's about him explaining further to those who may actually misinterpret or misunderstand the instruction as it was issued on the 31st.
I know you're limited on the kind of merits that you can discuss, but I remember him stating that at no point is he going to indulge in the discussion on operations. But we already have Brown Mkhwanazi, who he does admit to knowing to a certain extent, and he has given testimony before the Madlanga Commission that he was speaking directly with the minister about operations in Stilfontein, which falls under police operations, and he's outright denied ever assisting or engaging in any conversations to that effect. Is that not contradictory to what his own quote-unquote comrade or associate, however you want to call it, Brown Mkhwanazi, stating before the commission earlier this month?
In actual fact, the conversations that were picked up from the cell phone of a third person, that would be Mr. Matlala, there are a lot of issues about it. Mr. Mkhwanazi is going to address the commissioners about the validity of those messages. But in terms of Mr. Mkhwanazi and Brown Mkhwanazi talking about the issues at Stilfontein, it was at the level of a broad community participation of people who were affected by these Amazambas. Not necessarily that Brown Mkhwanazi had intimate knowledge of the police operations and the minister was feeding information on him, or the other way around as well, Brown Mkhwanazi feeding information about the operations of the police. So the minister will always be a grounded person, consult with members of the public, even on the issues of Lusikisiki during those matters there. It was members of the public who brought that to his attention. As part of his constituency, he will now and again interact with anybody. Many people will have his number, call him, register their concerns and issues, and he will take those issues seriously, because we are in a democracy where the black majority or the majority of people matters, and therefore he can't just say, I'm not going to listen to this person simply because of the perceived conduct of this person or otherwise. So in actual fact, his proximity to Brown Mkhwanazi had nothing to do with the operations of the police. It was about him knowing him as a member of the ANC then, but I think he is going to address the commission in terms of how he feels about that now.
Just quickly, are you teasing that the signal message that we've seen in evidence, that clandestine messaging that is purported to be of the minister, actually wasn't a message sent by him?
The minister is going to address the commission on that.
All right, we'll leave it there. That is Tim Wiesum showing you, teasing the kind of evidence that we can expect from the Minister Mkhwanazi as he continues to give evidence relating to his version, rather, in those very serious allegations. I think that the Minister will be taking the stand quite shortly, as we expect that the Commission will continue in the next few minutes with that particular evidence. Remember, he is represented by quite a large contingent, a legal contingent that includes Advocate Tembe Toby, that is the senior counsel, and of course he is answering to very serious allegations regarding the PKTT disbandment announcement and the possible circumstances surrounding that alleged decision. We've already heard evidence from Mkhwanazi and several other witnesses that he didn't have the power to take that decision, and that decision was allegedly taken in order to shield criminal syndicates, particularly that of alleged cartel member Vusi Matlala, who is alleged to have been funding his alleged presidential ambitions. Now, when he first took the stand a few days ago, it was just a few hours that he was able to start with that foundation about the PKTT, him laying the foundation that it was a political intervention and that it was something that was going to exist in the interim. It was never going to be part of that permanent organizational structure. He also points out that in those 5 months that he started his term as the Minister of Police, he was able to get that feasibility study, which informed his decision about the PKTT. However, there are still many more questions for the Minister regarding the various different task teams that have existed within the South African Police Service services, and what is it about this PKTT that within the short few months that he had entered that tenure as Minister of Police, he had reached a definitive decision, rather, that this particular team had to be disbanded. And of course, what is that relationship with the alleged associate or the alleged comrade, that is Brown Mkhwanazi? And then of course, Sthembiso Mshengu, who just joined us recently, keeping mum about that particular signal message that directly dealt with the realm of operations. You may remember it was stating, was that arrest affected? Of course, all of those details will have to be discussed by the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, when he takes the stand. I am hearing behind us that is Jeremy Michaels, the spokesperson of the Madlanga Commission, who's giving us a hint that they're going to start with those proceedings shortly. So I think it is prudent at this moment, Ayanda, to toss back to you as we wait for the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, who is on a leave of absence, to take the witness stand. As he continues with his testimony, we expect that he'll be going on for the next 2 days regarding his defense in these particular allegations that place him at the center or at the heart of this particular probe regarding allegations of criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system. Police Minister Senzo Mkhwanazi will also get this opportunity as being an implicated person in this week of the evidence to get that opportunity to rather feature in this prelim report that will be released by the 17th of December, or rather will be handed to the President by the 17th of December, and will give him an indication as to what the possible problem, if any, that South Africa is faced with regarding these allegations. It's over to you in studio, Ayanda.
Kenny Mapanga, thanks very much indeed for giving us a roundup of what we know so far as we anticipate the arrival of these commissioners at the Madlanga Commission, who are going to enter the room at any moment now. We were told that they said to resume at 25 minutes towards 12 o'clock. We are at that very minute. And so if history is anything to go by, we know they'll walk in at any moment. But just to also help you, I suppose, place where we are insofar as the work of the Commission is concerned, they are wrapping up this week. In fact, tomorrow is the day. That's when the inquiry will go on a recess to give it an opportunity to fully focus on that preliminary report that is meant to be on the President's desk by the 17th of December. And it will cover parts of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Commission's work. You might remember Phase 1 was around the allegations that have been made, led in part by Matlala Mkhwanazi following his bombshell briefing in July. We then had a succession of people, both in camera and, of course, in the building, saying essentially what Matlala Mkhwanazi has been alluding to, this idea that part of the apparatus of the SAPS, both at a national and provincial level, had been captured, and there were key role players in that particular operation, for lack of a better term. Phase 2 gives those individuals who've been named an opportunity to respond, and we've seen some of them. Brown Mkhwanazi has taken to the hot seat. We've obviously heard from Imogen Mashazi, the former Ekurhuleni city manager, and most recently, Julius Mkhwanazi, the EMPD Deputy Police Chief, who we understand is also now on suspension. Those are the people who form part of Phase 2, and we're anticipating to also hear now from Senzo Mkhwanazi, who is, as we've been saying all morning, really a central figure in the claims that have been made. It'll be interesting to see how the Commission deals with this request from Senzo Mkhwanazi's legal team to make some kind of representations themselves. I think it was a request to cross-examine. I don't think the Commission has had to deal with a request like that from a witness before. And given just how restricted insofar as the time is concerned, one has to wonder how they'll deal with that particular request, because as I've mentioned, there are only just 2 days left before they go for that recess. Senzo Mkhwanazi in the past has, of course, emphatically denied that he's ever been part of any corrupt dealings. In fact, he's distanced himself from some of those claims that he ended the work of the PKTT in an attempt to protect from prosecution some politically connected individuals, including the Cat Matlalas and Brown Mkhwanazi. So I imagine he's going to build on that line when he finally takes to the hot seat, as I mentioned, at any moment now. But speaking of Cat Matlala, his name, of course, has come up several times, most recently just a few minutes ago when Julius Mkhwanazi was on the witness stand. He was asked to comment on the nature of the relationship, that's Julius Mkhwanazi, that he had with Cat Matlala. Let's take you back to that moment.
Have you ever received any money from Mr. Vusi Matlala, or him personally, directly, or any of his companies?
No, but
It's a yes or no.
The part just might be interesting.
No, let me say.
Okay, I'll allow you the but.
Let me relate the relations. Yes, we had dinner, we had lunch, suppers. In fact, we're talking now. You see, sometimes he'll give me money for petrol, or sometimes he'll borrow money from me. Saying I'm petrol, 500 rand, 300 rand. It's those monies. But we use, as I've said to you, we're beginning to be that close now, talking every day and meeting and discussing. Even after these failed things, he was never negative to me. You see, he was very positive, and you see, the only thing that stopped the communications, this news that, hey, now there was this shock and fear. You see, but we, Madlanga commissioners, were very, very close. You see, communicating. The only thing that he didn't like to discuss politics, but we'll discuss many things. Even some frustrations that I was having at work. In fact, I treated him as a brother.
I treated him as a brother. That's a direct quote from Julius Mkhwanazi, who testified earlier.